Hi folks, Dave with dbstechtalk. Today we're going to talk about the Sivga Phoenix. I do greatly appreciate RDT Hifi for sending them over for review. RDT Hifi, you rock. Alright, so the Sivga Phoenix, they are a 32 ohm of impedance, 103 decibels of sensitivity, frequency response of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and they have a 50 millimeter dynamic driver that uses a moving coil type technology. The Sivga Phoenix, they come in this unique box, has a little bit of wood look to it. It's a very nice box. Inside it, you are going to get a carrying case that is actually one of the nicest carrying cases that comes with a headphone. And that says Sivga on it. Has this pebbled look to it. Has these feet on the bottom so that things will sit straight up. It's a very nice touch. When you open it up, you get this velourish type of material. It does not have a pocket for cables, which is an interesting take on it. But hey, you know what? I can live with it. You get this little burlap sack that says Sivga on it for your cable. Speaking of the cables, they are a very nice fabric cable. 3.5 millimeter. You do get a 1/4 inch adapter. Has this little spring strain relief. Metal casing. Goes to the split, which is metal. And then you get 2.5 millimeters, which are labeled L and R. So very easy to be able to plug in. It's a nice touch for the cable. It's a little bit on the long side, about 10 feet, but it feels very nice, very sturdy. Doesn't feel like it's going to break anytime soon. The headphones themselves, they weigh 296 grams. They are made of zebra wood, and they pretty much have an all metal build to them, which is a nice touch. Has a little bit of branding, says Sivga, and then you have R and L for left and right. You have those very interesting pads with the gaps towards the top and front. And it's got this weird kind of fabric feel on it. They're kind of a hybrid build. Not bad. A little bit on the small side though. So when you have the headphone headband all the way down, they are extremely small. This is basically on ear size. And I can cup them very well. And in this shape, they do not fit on my ears at all. I mean, they're extremely small. I have to fully extend out the headband in order for them to fit on my head. Then it is just basically enough. These are not very comfortable for me for various reasons. Number one, you have to expand out the extensions all the way. And two, the pads are very shallow. I can feel the driver against my ear. Also, the pads are small, and so my ear barely fits in there. It's like touching the top of my ear or the bottom, and I kind of have to move it around. So if you have larger ears or ears about the same size as mine, at least if you can measure by camera, these will not be very comfortable for you, in my opinion. They're nice and light. I do not have any problems with the headband or anything of the sort. Clamp force, all of that's fine. It all comes down to that pad. Now, from what I understand, Sivga is looking at making new pads that are a little bit larger, and if that's the case, maybe these would fit a little bit better. I do not know of any other pads that will fit these. If you know of any, put it down in the comments down below for somebody who may be considering the Sivga Phoenix. Overall, I find that the build and the comfort is subjective. Might work for you, doesn't work for me. I like the build of it. Comfort-wise, not so much. How do they sound? I have a couple of describers for the Sivga Phoenix, and if you like the Sivga Phoenix, if you own them, if you've heard them, anything of the sort, please activate your sensitivity sensor now. You may or may not agree with this review, and so please activate your sensitivity sensor. All right. My describers and descriptors for the Sivga Phoenix. They're a grab bag of sound. It's a 50-50 like and dislike possibility. Bass. The bass has good depth to it, and it has a mid-bass shelf. It's a little bit muddled on busier tracks, and it has decent tone. I don't mind the bass. I actually rather like the bass on the Sivga Phoenix. I find it to be quite fun and engaging. It's got a nice girth to it, especially down in the sub-bass regions when called upon. It's not going to be anything overpowering. It's not going to be anything that's super mega impactful and is going to wow you, but at the same time, it's not going to disappoint you. I find that it's a very pleasant sounding sub-bass. Mid-bass and upper bass are very much the focus on the Sivga Phoenix. Has a pretty decent size shelf on it, and it does a good job with impact. It has a nice pleasantness to it. It's a very fun and engaging type of bass. And tonality wise, it's fine. It doesn't do anything that's going to be offensive or out of control or anything of the sort. Where the bass does lack is in details and in clarity. I find that the bass can get a little bit muddled and a little bit jumbled up, especially on busier tracks. I find that it will lose its a little consistency and cohesion, and it'll just be a kind of a one-note sound. And then also, I find that every now and then, just overall, it'll just lack detail. It won't really portray the full bass line through. It'll be just kind of pushing everything together. But it does most of that on busier tracks. The mids are unfortunately a little recessed. This is a V-shaped headphone, but it is a mildly V-shaped, which is a nice touch to it. It has a fuller body than you would find on a lot of V-shaped type of headphones. The upper mids are a little bit more prominent than the lower mids, and the lower mids do suffer a little bit from bleed from the bass, but it actually adds a little bit of body and warmth to the overall to the mids, which is a nice touch. And I find that the upper mids presence actually isn't too aggressive. It's not too forward or too unpleasing. It's not an unbearable sound. I do enjoy the mids. They have decent clarity to them, and decent amount of tone to them. They're not anything offensive. Unfortunately, I just find them to be boring. They just lack emotion. It's got everything there that should be there. It lacks a little bit in detail retrieval, but as far as actual tone and quality of sound, the mids should be pleasant. But to me, they just don't emit any emotion. They just sound like they're lackluster and just going through the motions. And that's really disappointing for me. And the treble has more lower treble presence than upper treble presence. And that's a nice thing. It's a little bit laid back and very smooth and non-fatiguing. It does have decent sparkle and energy, and the lower treble can come across a little bit aggressive at times, but for the most part, I didn't really find it to be offensive. Just every now and then you would get a song that would be a little bit too much in that region, but very few and far between. For the most part, I found the treble to be very engaging and very pleasing. And just like everything else, though, it just kind of lacked detail. And it just lacked clarity. Overall, I found that the details on the Sivga Phoenix were just a little bit behind and just weren't always really revealing everything that was in the song that I know was in the song. You just missed out on some of this stuff. And it was just kind of disappointing in that regard. Also, it was a little bit grainy and harsh sounding, especially in the mids and in the treble. I did find that the bass distorted sometimes, especially on busier tracks. Soundstage wise, it was a little small, a little intimate, and it just sounded compressed. It didn't sound very open. To me, the Sivga Phoenix is not a very open sounding, open headphone. It lacks air. It just sounds stuffy. It's like it's gasping for air. It does a decent job with depth and layering. You can read into a stage. You can kind of place things fairly well. Imaging is accurate. Placement is very good. And I do enjoy that aspect of the soundstage. I just wish that it was wider and had a more airy feel to it. Overall, I just found that the Sivga Phoenix is overpriced for what you're getting. At $255, it has a lot more competition, and to me, it just doesn't beat it. I would definitely take a Sennheiser 6XX or 650 HD 600 over the Sivga Phoenix. I just think that they do better tone and timbre. Also, I find that they do better with placement and soundstage. Even though those two headphones, the 600 and the 650 6XX, do not have the widest sound stages, to me they sound wider than the Sivga Phoenix. And also, I just found that they are more balanced and cohesive across the board, especially in the mids. Also, the 560S would be another one that I would pick over the Sivga Phoenix. I think that the 560S has a brighter sound signature, but does a better job in detail retrieval, and does a better job in resolution also of the details, but it is a brighter sound. Does have a wider soundstage, and also a little bit better, as far as just overall balance. The Hifi Sundara, to me, the Sundara is more cohesive, better detail retrieval, better detail resolution. Does have a little bit brighter of a treble. Definitely has a wider soundstage, and I would take the Sundara over the Sivga Phoenix. Also, the Hifi 400i. The 400i has a little bit more bass impact and is a little bit more engaging in the mids, and also has a little bit more detail retrieval and resolution that I would prefer over the Sivga Phoenix. I know you're saying, man, Dave, you're being rough on the Sivga Phoenix. I like them. They're kind of that oddball headphone, that one that you listen to it and you're like, why do I like this? And you can't really place why. That's the Sivga Phoenix. It's not a bad headphone, but it's not a good headphone. It's just kind of that oddball one. And that's why when I say 50-50 like dislike, that's my playlist when I'm using the Sivga Phoenix. The Sivga Phoenix for me is 50-50. I'm going to like the song or I'm going to dislike the song with it. It's just kind of hit or miss. As far as just the grab bag of sound, that's exactly what it is. It's a grab bag of sound. You don't really know what you're going to get every time you hit the next button for a song. Speaking of sources, I use this on multiple sources. I used it on the Mytek Liberty. I used it on the Mytek Liberty going balanced out to the THX AAA 789. I used it on the Topping E30 going into a Magni 3 Heresy. I used the Mytek going into the Magni 3 Heresy. I used it on the Gishelli stack, which is the Enog 2 DAC going into an Archel, also an Archel 2, also going into an Airish balanced amplifier. Couldn't use these balanced though. You have to use everything single-ended. So the Airish I was using an adapter with. The also used it with the Grace Design S-Stack going into the 789, also going into the different Archels from Gishelli. And I found that the Sivga Phoenix sounded good on the Gishellis and also on the Topping E30 Magni 3 Heresy combos the most. And it was easy to power. There was no problems there. I didn't have to push them very hard at all on the volume knob. In fact, I was usually around 930 on low gain on the majority of the amplifiers that I was using. And I didn't have any issues in that regard. Also played it well portable. And I just found that the Sivga Phoenix is just a another headphone for me. And at $255, it has too much competition and it's just overpriced. And for me, it's just a grab bag of sound that I didn't like what I grabbed out. And for me, it's 50-50 like or dislike, and I'm going to check this one as a dislike. This has been Dave with DBS Tech Talk. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.